Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies, and in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. It's Wednesday, June the 3rd, 2020. Today we're starting with Anthony Granger case again and the gross misconduct hearing that was brought against retired Assistant Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, Stephen Hayward. The hearing instigated following an investigation by the Independent Office of Police Conduct started on Monday and was scheduled to last 3 days, exploring the allegations that the operation in which saw Anthony Granger shot dead in his car by firearms officers was based on intelligence which contained serious inaccuracies, presenting a distorted and in some respects exaggerated picture of the threat that Mr. Granger presented. Also, that Hayward admitted a firearms log from the days leading up to the shooting was completed after the shooting, and he failed to tell the initial inquiry that the log was completed following the event, which appeared were made to misrepresent the information available at the time and to retrospectively justify Mr. Hayward's decision to authorise the firearms operation on March the 1st, 2012. Yesterday, Hayward's barrister asked for the hearing to be stayed as he said the force had breached regulations by delaying the hearing, also saying it was unfair to Mr. Hayward, who gave exemplary service to the public, but it is also unfair to other participants and unfair on the public. Well, in yet another example of police privilege, even those who have retired get some protection as the hearing has been closed and Hayward no longer faces misconduct proceedings. Even though the log that Hayward completed after the shooting, which should have been prepared before the operation, contained inaccurate information about Mr. Granger's previous convictions, which seemed to be an attempt to justify the killing. Chairwoman of the panel, Nahid Azjad, dismissed the allegation, criticising the delay. She said Mr. Granger's family, Mr. Hayward and the public have been let down by the appropriate authority. Well, I'd suggest the only people let down are Granger's family and the public. I'm pretty sure Hayward is over the moon that he got away with conducting an operation that resulted in the death of an unarmed man. Apparently, redactions in evidence couldn't be lifted, therefore the full evidence couldn't be presented. And I find that hard to believe, seeing as the police are the ones who put the redactions in the first place, so they would have the original copies. In January 2014, the then Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, Peter Fahey, was charged with a health and safety breach over the shooting, but the case was thrown out after it was argued evidence was so secret it couldn't be put before a jury. Bollocks. Last year, the public inquiry into Granger's death found serious deficiencies in the planning and conduct of the operation by senior officers. Unbelievable. Well, it appears my merch design is really on the button. You really can get away with murder if you join the police. Sticking with Greater Manchester Police now, and figures requested by the Liberal Democrat MP Layla Moran in a Freedom of Information request have revealed that in the first 6 months of 2019, nearly 300 rapes and 9,000 burglaries were written off as unsolved. In fact, over the time frame, Greater Manchester Police logged over 86,000 crimes as investigation complete, no suspect identified. Layla Moran said it was scandalous and so many cases were left unsolved. Of course, Greater Manchester Police Assistant Chief Constable Rob Potts tries to excuse the huge amount of unsolved crimes, stating that at a time of reduced resources and more demand, officers had to make difficult decisions every day to ensure they were protecting the most vulnerable. You mean like those who might have been offended by a tweet, rather than those who have been devastated by an actual crime? The list of unsolved crimes and the number of said crimes include 284 rapes, 317 drug trafficking offences, 2,788 stalking and harassment cases, 8,922 residential burglaries, 391 business and community burglaries, just over 12,000 criminal damage and arson attacks, 689 other sex offences, no surprise there, 586 possession of weapons, 1,983 robberies of personal property, 5,428 shoplifting offences, 14,500 vehicle offences, 3,222 violence with injury offences. It's been said that crimes in which the police force marks a case as requiring no further action has increased over the last 10 years from 361,180 in 2010 to 2.2 million Assistant Chief Constable Rob Potts said being a victim of any crime can have a devastating impact on the lives of those affected and the families and communities. We work closely with victims to support them through investigations and update them with the progress and the eventual outcomes. If certain investigations are not continued following an initial assessment, it does not mean that no positive action is taken. There's lots of different support available for victims of crime aside from the investigation, including the Victim Services Partnership in Greater Manchester, which helps to support and signpost those who need specialist support. He says it's vital that people report crime to us so that we can consider the overall picture of criminality when targeting offenders and crime hotspot locations. We are committed to continuing to work closely with our partners and our communities and all communities to problem solve within neighbourhoods in order to prevent crimes reoccurring. I think what he meant to say was that it's vital that people report crimes to us so we can establish the people and areas to turn a blind eye to. Surrey Police received a backlash online over a series of tweets mocking a McLaren supercar driver after he crashed a £150,000 car into a wall. But don't get me wrong, I'm sure most of us would have had a good laugh, providing the driver wasn't seriously injured, but we certainly expect a much higher standard of professionalism from our police. The initial tweet said sarcastically, somehow the driver of this McLaren couldn't keep the car on a straight road in a 40 limit. Investigations continue, with following tweets in response to comments suggesting the driver had no talent, and that having driven cars with more power and definitely more power to weight, the skill of not stamping down on a go pedal is a very basic one, even more so when on a warm, dry evening. However, Surrey Police were left a little embarrassed after suggesting the driver was speeding, by later making a statement that no offences had been identified in relation to the incident. The tweet felt the force of disappointed followers, which prompted Chief Inspector Hodder to make a statement, saying, "We are aware that the tweet posted by the Roads Policing Unit in relation to this collision has attracted some criticism. It was certainly not our intention to cause any offence or belittle the severity of the incident. Maybe you should remember that when you go after people for their tweets that allegedly offend people." He said, "The team continually balances the need to raise awareness of road safety messages whilst being innovative in our messaging on social media." Innovative? Idiotic, I think you mean. "I'm fully supportive of officers highlighting road safety matters," he said, and engaging with the public on social media, which continues to be an important channel of communication. On the 1st of June, I spoke about how David Jamieson, the Police and Crime Commissioner for the West Midlands, faced backlash over putting forward Wahid Salim to fill the role of his assistant. The move was criticised by both Labour and Conservative members of the West Mids Police and Crime Panel, who hold the Commissioner to account, branding Salim as an inappropriate choice due to concerns over his past behaviour. Salim was banned from holding a public office position for 1 year in 2004, after he was found to have leaked commercially sensitive information about a bid in a council property sale, disclosing that information to an unsuccessful bidder in order for them to submit a higher bid. His actions were deemed to amount to serious misconduct, and he was banned from holding public office anywhere in the country for a year. It was said that the Police and Crime Panel was set to reject the appointment, but even though there were many against the appointment of Salim, Labour's David Jamieson has gone ahead and hired him for the £56,000 a year role. Anyway, the Crime Panel have accused him of ignoring a democratic process and say they plan to raise the matter with Home Secretary Priti Patel. Panel member Councillor Mike Bird, leader of Walsall Council, said that it's totally and utterly irresponsible from a Police and Crime Commissioner. He clearly thinks he is above the democratic process. He ought to accept the fact that this is a situation that is not going to go away and is in fact now going to escalate to a higher level. I will be bringing the matter to the attention of the Home Secretary. In a letter to Mr Jamieson, concerns were also raised over some of Mr Salim's past social media posts, while the Police and Crime Commissioner was urged to scrap the appointment and re-advertise the position. Mr Jamieson defended his deputy for posting controversial material on social media, saying they were part of his status as a public figure who comments on high-profile issues. He also accused the panel of double standards and said that in the past it had repeatedly failed to support and scrutinise his direction of the force. Well, you see, Jamieson, strange as it may seem, but the crime panel are actually there to scrutinise you. Has the power gone to your head a little bit? I said it the other day, it's not what you know, it's who you know, unfortunately. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Dame Cressida Orwell is taking George Orwell's 1984 way too seriously after calling on telecoms companies to shut down phones used for county lines drug dealing. Making out that this is all about disrupting drugs gangs, she said meetings were taking place between the police, the Home Office and phone companies in an effort to solve the problem. She added, it's a unique way of using phones like that. We'd say it's obvious to the companies who supply the devices. Why don't they just switch them off? Just like that. I'm very hopeful we will come to a satisfactory conclusion, but we're not there yet. We want to destroy this model, she said. Now, I understand that drugs gangs can be a problem. Youngsters can be dragged into a life of crime or worse. I totally get that. But the problem is the proven track record of the police being given an inch and taken a mile. Giving the police the power to have people's phones shut off is a bad idea. Every power the police are given, they abuse. And who's to say that some disgruntled plod isn't going to put in requests to have someone's device switched off because they got butt hurt? If there's an issue with people using phones to carry out criminality, then when they're caught and get found guilty, because that's very important, you know, then get a judge to issue an order that they can't have a phone. Then if found with one, they can have it confiscated. This way, the person must be found guilty first, rather than arbitrarily, and it needs, and as it needs someone to be found guilty and a judge to issue, and it's not going to be abused as much. I know some of you won't agree with me on that, and I know some of you will say that it's wrong to prevent someone from having a phone, etc. But you see, I'm from a time when mobiles didn't exist, and I know that life can still go on without a mobile phone. Also, I'm not against preventing criminality. Therefore, if you are found guilty of something, then punishment must ensue, exactly as we fight for on the channel when we're fighting against, when the police are found guilty of something. So I have to be balanced. So please remember that when lambasting me in the comments. The Supreme Court, the UK's highest court, is set to consider whether paedophile stings by paedophile hunters that have resulted in a prosecution are a breach of a right to privacy. Let me repeat that. The Supreme Court, the UK's highest court, is set to consider whether paedophile stings by paedophile hunters that have resulted in a prosecution are a breach of the right to privacy. A virtual hearing to consider the case of 37-year-old Mark Sutherland from Scotland, who thought he was communicating with a 13-year-old on gay dating app Granger, is set to go ahead. It will decide whether covert sting operations by vigilante groups are a breach of the right to a private life and private correspondence under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. When Sutherland was tried at Glasgow Sheriff Court in 2018, the jury heard how he had sent explicit pictures to what he believed was a 13-year-old boy called James, who he had contacted on the dating site Grindr. Even though he was told James was just 13, he sent explicit pictures and made arrangements to meet up anyway. But the person Sutherland was talking to was in fact 48-year-old Paul Devine, a member of the group Groom Resistance Scotland. The court defines paedophile hunters as self-appointed groups of vigilantes who impersonate children in order to expose people whom they consider to be sexual predators. Sounds awfully similar to what the police do. When Sutherland arrived at Patrick bus station in Glasgow to meet the boy, he was intercepted by the vigilante group, who streamed their encounter live on social media. They informed police and Sutherland was arrested. He was unanimously found guilty of 2 charges of attempting to communicate indecently with an older child. Sheriff Martin Jones QC jailed Sutherland for a total of 2 years. Sutherland had previously been imprisoned in 2015 for 21 months after sending a 12-year-old boy explicit pictures and inappropriate messages 2 years earlier, clearly proving that the sentences imposed are simply not long enough to deter them. According to Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary in Scotland, almost half of online grooming cases result from the activities of vigilante groups. Again, showing how inept the police actually are at doing what they're supposed to do. In a later case, however, against another paedophile, the evidence was dismissed as inadmissible and that the exchange of messages amounted to fraud on behalf of those trying to identify online predators. Lawyers said the vigilante's activities interfered with his rights under European Convention of Human Rights Article 8, and using their evidence in any trial would mean the court was acting incompatibly with those rights. The sheriff rejected all the evidence by saying that by pretending falsely to be young children, the vigilantes had in fact acted unlawfully. Now, I'm completely horrified by this. First of all, it removes 50% chance that predators are going to get caught. Also, 50% of all prosecutions have come from paedophile hunters. It gives precedent for these scumbags to argue that their human rights have been breached in every case, even cases where the police do the same. And it's only a matter of time before the courts, run by the very people they're now trying to protect under the guise of human rights, allegedly, to find more reasons to allow it to continue without serious penalty. I mean, what about the human rights of the children these groups are going on to protect by catching these people? Wouldn't it make more sense for the police to employ these people to do this work? As much as I distrust the police, at least the argument of not being regulated is taken care of, considering they seem to do a far better job than the police do on one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. Matt Hancock has changed the rules again. Coronavirus restrictions that were first brought in on March 23rd had previously been reviewed on a rolling 3-week basis when they would either extend the rules or make changes, though they were able to make changes in between. But now they want imposed restrictions held in place slightly longer before they review them. In a statement that was released yesterday afternoon, Hancock wrote, "This will allow decisions to align more closely with the period of time necessary to assess the impact of previous changes on key data feeds, including the R infection rate. The government will also keep all the measures under continual review and will account to Parliament on an ongoing basis." It suggests that since the last extension was made on May 28th, the latest rules are likely to stay in place until June 26th. The change had not been announced in the House of Commons and was only posted online, allowing only hard copies to be available in Parliament. And this means that the general public won't have had any advance warning or any input into a decision that directly affects us all. Although the time frame between reviews has only changed by 1 week, if he's been allowed to do this in relative secrecy this time, what's to stop him or others changing the rules again without oversight or public opinion? You know, a week here, a week there, when people are used to the slow incremental increases, we can start adding a fortnight here and a fortnight there and potentially hold the country in lockdown indefinitely. And with these changes being allowed without debate, it makes a mockery of the democratic process. It seems to me that these people have forgotten that they only have power because we give it to them, and we don't give them power to oppress us. We give them the power to do what's right for us and what is voted for. But even the general public fail to remember this and simply moan about the fact the politicians are not doing what they said, but yet continue to vote for more politicians who have no regard for our needs and simply only think about themselves. Dominic Cummings back in the news again. This time he's failed to have his name removed from a sex discrimination case being brought by Sonia Khan, Sajid Javid's former special advisor. Government lawyers have been pursuing the removal of Cummings' name from the claim, but their demand has been rejected after they failed to provide a counter-argument acceptable to the claim that his behaviour was pivotal to the case. Not only does it now look like the government are trying to protect Bojo's chief aide from more controversy, but it will also leave Cummings wide open to personal liability for any damages awarded. Khan was Javid's media advisor at the time. She was escorted from number 10 after Cummings accused her of misleading him over contact with individuals close to the former Chancellor, Philip Hammond. She denied any inappropriate contact. An employment tribunal hearing in central London saw a judge set the case for a 5-day hearing in December, at which the relationship between Cummings and Johnson will be scrutinised. Barristers for Khan named Cummings as a respondent in the case, which also includes an unfair dismissal claim. 28-year-old Khan was accused by Cummings of lying about her conversations with Hammond's former staff member, Poppy Trowbridge. It is understood Khan was asked to hand over her work phone and also presented her personal phone to Cummings. In a meeting days after Khan's departure with Boris Johnson's team of special advisor, Cummings is said to have remarked, "If you don't like how I run things, there's the door." Cummings has previously faced criticism over what some describe as his high-handed behaviour. In 2012, a senior civil servant received a payout of 25 grand from the Department of Education in a bullying case she took against Cummings and a senior member of Michael Gove's team when Cummings was a special advisor at the department. An internal investigation found no grounds for disciplinary action, however. Cummings also drew criticism for hiring Andrew Sabisky, a temporary contractor who resigned over comments about eugenics and race. Boris Johnson could also be required to give evidence to the tribunal. At the time of Khan's dismissal last September, the terms of employment for special advisors made it clear that it was only the Prime Minister who had the power to sack them. This was then changed after Khan left, giving Cummings ultimate responsibility for disciplinary matters. Former Humberside Police Inspector Scott Snowden and former Humberside Superintendent Ed Cook have been charged with exchanging grossly offensive and sexually charged WhatsApp messages about women they came across whilst on duty. Excuse the pun. Appearing at Grimsby Magistrates Court via video link, Snowden pleaded not guilty and he denied charges that he had sent a message by a public electronics communication network that was grossly offensive or of an indecent, obscene or menacing nature, whilst working in Scunthorpe between January 21st, 2017 and October 12, 2018. Cook will have a separate video link with the court to his hear plea, although District Judge Daniel Curtis said he was in the dark about the reasons why they had not appeared together for their pre-trial plea hearing and expressed his surprise at the situation. Humberside Police, of course, declined to comment until court proceedings are concluded. The date for the trial has not yet been set. Very big thank you to channel Patreon supporters. I'm sure they're doing it on purpose up there. Your support is truly appreciated. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials. Good night, all. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.